Welcome to another edition of Maverick University. I'm your host, David Hallberg. Joining me today is Brother Tim Green, an evangelist for nearly 45 or 46 years. And it's a privilege to have him on the campus of Providence Baptist College with us today. He preached chapel for us and then so graciously decided to stick around to talk with us about some ministry topics. And so thanks for coming in, Brother Green.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. We'll talk about several things. First of all, I wanted to talk to you about caring for the visiting preacher. As an evangelist, you're always the visiting preacher, I suppose.
Yeah.
You're probably in other churches more than you are in your home church.
By far.
So I just wanted to talk to you about, the good, the bad, the ugly. And of course, the bad and the ugly always are always more memorable. But I just want to talk about several categories. Maybe this can help a pastor as he's, going to host a meeting or something like that. And maybe there's some situations that he's never thought of that, only an evangelist who's had experience would think of.
Sure.
I'm not trying to say that I have any experience in the world of evangelism, but the college allows me to go out 1 week a summer with a tour group, and that's eye-opening enough with only 1 week a year, much less, as many times as you are out and about. So talk to us a little bit about just communication between the pastor and the visiting preacher. What are some of the things that you as a visiting preacher appreciate in communication and what needs to be communicated with you?
I would, at the outset, I don't have any complaints.
Yeah.
I've never slept in a place as bad as the Lord Jesus Christ slept. He said foxes had holes and the birds of the air had nests, but the Son of Man hath not any place to lay his head. So
Yeah.
I don't have any complaints that way.
Sure.
I've stayed in all kinds of places. Some were comfortable and commodious, and others were far from that. And a lot of times, early in my ministry, I would stay in a lot of homes. Mm-hmm. But I don't stay in many homes anymore. There's a few churches where I do. Most people think their homes are commodious or comfortable or convenient, and they're none of the above. When you have to get dressed to go to the bathroom every day in someone else's house, that's not a convenient spot to be in. And I had 3 rules, simple rules. I would never stay in a home where I was left alone with the man's wife or children. The man would have to always be there. And then I would never stay in a home where the kids were terrible. They're just completely unruly and unkind, uncomfortable, impossible. It was just impossible to stay there. And I never would stay in a home where the people would be critical of their pastor. Oh. And if they started that, I'd just, have to make a scene. Yeah. And I had to do it a time or two. Not anymore, because I don't stay in homes. Mm-hmm. I have some places I preach where I have friends, and they have homes that are comfortable, and you have your own private facilities and et cetera, and you have a place where you can get away from everybody else. And so I do occasionally stay in homes, but most of the time nowadays it's in hotels, or some churches have prophets' rooms, which I'm not overly happy about those most of the time. When you have to, you have to take a shower in the ladies' bathroom in the back of the auditorium, and they've got a little room tucked in the corner with an old mattress and a bunch of junk furniture that they collected. That's not comfortable either, and you don't have any security at those places at all. Oh, yeah. And I didn't care about it. Years ago, when as a young man, you don't care. I'm old now. I don't want to get any confrontational situations because I'm not going to win. I probably wouldn't have won back then, but I thought I could. But those are the things. And some of the, I had a great story. I had a preacher friend. He never would stay in a prophet's room. He just would not do it.
Yes, sir.
To be frank with you, probably 75% of them are terrible. And so he would never do it, ever. So we were preaching together in a meeting. He's an older man. He's in heaven now. And so I got stuck, quote unquote, in the prophet's room.
Yes, sir.
So he was razzing me, first 2 or 3 days that we were there. I understand. But his hotel was a little flea bag place. I wouldn't have wanted to have stayed there, but he had his hotel.
Yeah.
So the pastor said to him, we come back from lunch, he said, would you like to see the prophet's room upstairs? And he's smiling all the way up there. He's going to rib me. We get up there. It's the most beautiful one I'd ever stayed in my life, period. Beautiful oak floors. Everything was just fabulous. Everything was perfect. The only thing was upstairs, which is, but then it didn't matter. Now I don't like the upstairs ones. Somebody else is going to have to haul my luggage up. I can't do it anymore. But yeah, I think most pastors don't travel, so they don't know. And sometimes hotel chains, they change hands. And what was nice 10 years ago now is a flea bag hotel or a lot of problems that impossible. So I think the rooms ought to be checked. Mm-hmm. When you're paying, I don't know, $50 to $150 a night for a hotel nowadays, I would make sure that it's nice and it's comfortable and it's what it ought to be because the churches are paying for it. But there's a lot. It's interesting. It's been an interesting trip for me.
Yes, sir.
But again, I don't have any complaints. I've had to tell a couple preachers, but in a long, long time.
Yes, sir.
This was just not appropriate. And I've stayed in houses, and the electricity goes off, and it's just a lot of. But it's just part of life, so it's kind of it makes it interesting to me. After you get through it.
Yeah, not fun in the moment.
No problems are.
I'm reminded of a time we were on tour and we stayed in a family's home. The tour group guys did, and we were singing at this church the next Sunday morning. And we were all packed up, everything was in the van before church started so that as soon as church was over, we could eat and go. And one of the men had left his unmentionables back at the house. And the lady of the house was so kind enough to put them in a plastic bag and tie them to the antenna of the van.
I've left clothes all over the country. One sock, I've left stuff. I mean, it's just part of my life. And it is kind of funny that stuff like that happens. My wife says, where's that? Mm-hmm. Or the worst part is going to a meeting and I forgot to pack stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I've gone without my shirts, all of my shirts, had to buy them. Gone without, I went to New Zealand one time, didn't take any socks, not one, except the ones I had on. They don't wear the same kind of socks over there that we do, so I had to buy some, but I left them with the preacher, the missionary when I came home, and I've gone without my outlines, leave all my outlines, which was I had to study that week. So there's a lot of fun things in life like that.
What about meals for a visiting preacher? Obviously, some preachers, when you're out and about, preachers always want to take you to the nicest restaurant. And
some do.
Yeah. And sometimes, you tend to eat out a lot. Is there some appreciation for a home-cooked meal?
Again, we used to eat in houses a lot more than we do now. Yeah. I only eat lunch. When I'm preaching meetings, I don't eat supper. I don't eat before I preach. I figure people would rather hear me speak than burp. So,
amen.
Amen. So, and I don't eat after church because that's a killer.
Yes, sir.
I had a lot of good evangelist friends who died, 55, 65 years young. I'm 72 now. Young men because they would eat breakfast, they'd eat lunch, they'd eat supper. And then they'd eat a big meal after church, and their weight got out of hand, and problems happened in their lives. That I think Americans, we eat too much, frankly.
Certainly. And
we eat wrong things most of the time. There's certain things. I like chocolate. I love M&Ms and stuff like that. But I'm very careful about it. Now I've had cancer also.
Oh, yes.
And cancer that I've had, it's determined that I can't eat anything but chicken or fish when it comes to meat. I can eat turkey.
Okay.
Just those three, that's it. And no beef or pork rest of my life, which, if I could have a big steak about as big as my Bible sitting here, and cook just the way I like it and just be able to chew on it and get the flavor, I'd be a happy man, and you don't have to take it out and throw it away. But yeah, food it's a big problem because people want to entertain you.
Yes, sir.
And our minds in America, that is, especially Christians, it's around food most of the time. So I'm pretty careful about it. I have to drink distilled water most of the time, and when I'm on the road. So I got a little bit of rules, about how I govern my life.
So a pastor would be wise to at least make that a point of conversation. Is there
Most
something
of
you
them
prefer?
do. Most of them call. Sometimes now they text a lot.
Yes, sir.
Texting is easy to communicate that kind of stuff, and most of them do. And some guys, I would say there's a percentage. I don't know what it is. 25-35% of the guys that I preach for every year, every other year, so they know. And the other guys, I just have to tell some guys. And I think I've offended people over the years unintentionally because, they wanted that big supper before church, and, people work during the day and they can't make it. Now, years ago, they did, but not anymore. So, but I just can't do it. I mean, it's impossible.
What about transportation? A lot of times you're flying to a church and you are being picked up at the airport or dropped off at the airport, and then if it's several day meeting, your transportation, what's
most of the time
helpful?
I don't have any, which
Okay.
is fine with me because I have a lot. If I had a car, number one, I don't know where to go,
Okay, it's true.
and if you're in a hotel, they're usually close by something that if you need to go get it, you can get it or on the way to church, or they'll get it when we go out to lunch. But I don't really like to have a car. Some churches do provide it, but I don't need one at all. I can stay in the hotel, get more work done. if I don't have a car to go someplace that I don't really need to go, So.
What can a pastor do for a meeting that you're preaching? A lot of times maybe you're preaching on Monday through Wednesday or the last half of the week. What can a preacher do to help prepare his church for a meeting spiritually that makes it a whole lot easier for you to preach a meeting?
Well, a couple years ago, I preached a meeting, maybe 3 years ago now, I preached a meeting at Brother Kenny Graham's in Arkansas. And he had put together a little booklet for his church, and it was called 30 Days to Revival or 1 Month to Revival, something like that.
Yeah.
So I got it, and I really liked it. And I said, Kenny, I'd like to add my own stuff to it, because he had some personal things that, it wouldn't fit generically in every church.
Sure.
So we collaborated on that and put it together. I initially put it all in Baptist Bread, the daily devotional that I edit. And then subsequently, we've put it in a booklet. And so I send it ahead to churches, and they use it in their churches. There's really 31 days, but it's called 1 Month to Revival. And so you do this one day and this the next day. And it has really helped the revival meetings. It's helped prepare people's minds and hearts. And I mentioned kind of the stuff you've talked about.
Sure.
I talked about money. I talk about food. I talk about everything. So that, I think, of course, I came out with it last year.
Okay.
And the first two meetings last year were, of course, in January, and really helped those meetings. But subsequently, COVID hit. So my revival meetings were, knocked out basically
Sure.
all of, for 5 months. But then it picked back up in the fall, and people have used it in the fall, and it's been a blessing. I had a guy last week, not far from here in Indiana. He ordered 200 of them for a revival that he's having in his church. So, I provide them free if I'm the guy doing the preaching.
Sure.
And I charge them a love offering, whatever they want to give. I don't care. I mean, I'm not into making any money off these things. And obviously I haven't, but I think it's helped. I know it's helped the revivals that I've had.
So the church will read these books corporately together.
One a day.
Yeah.
One a day.
A little devotional.
Maybe, yeah, like a devotional, basically. And there's Bible verses there, there's little quips and quotes, there's things about revival, there's things about various aspects of the revival, praying for the revival, giving to the revival, etc., that are in these booklets.
That's awesome. Concerning finances, you mentioned it briefly. What does a church need to do to take care of an evangelist financially? Obviously, some churches, I think they support you on a monthly basis.
Yeah, I have just a few.
Yeah.
I mean, it's $1,000 a month total, probably.
Sure.
It's not very much, but it has paid my utilities.
Mm-hmm.
We live in the same house we've lived in for 30-some years, so we don't have a house payment anymore.
Okay.
So that was like getting a big raise.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so I appreciate the churches that do that. They've been a big help. I don't know if I hope over the years I've been able to communicate that to them, how much I appreciate it, because I do. But, pretty hard to make it on $1,000 a month nowadays living.
Sure.
But there's a few churches that do it. I don't think there might be 15, 18, something like that.
Okay.
But it's been a blessing, and especially when I first got started. And now I'm at the end of the road. I know that. I mean, I'm not going to live another 30 years. I hope. I don't want to be 102. But they do support. I work on a love offering. Expenses basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so the churches pay for me to come. They pay my airfare. I let them know what it is. Most churches pay it ahead of time. Some don't. And when I get there, some forget to do it, which I don't complain. I'm not going to, bug them about it. A lot of churches don't. When you drive, they think you get there on a magic carpet, like it doesn't cost you anything to get there if you drive.
So only it costs you if you fly, but if you drive,
exactly,
no expense, right?
So that's why I fly most of the time.
It seems more dramatic, huh?
Yeah, so I would rather have that taken care of. But in other churches, they'll give you a gas card.
Okay.
Some guys fill your tank up at the end of the meeting, which, is a plus. But, I had to pay to get there.
It's true.
They're only paying one way is all they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't think they think about everything. I mean, they're pastors. And obviously evangelists don't think about everything on a pastor's side of it either. Mm-hmm. But I think if a church, I don't think very many churches do this, but I recommend it. And I recommend it in that little booklet that Kenny Graham and I put out. If a church had one revival meeting a year, mm-hmm. and let's say they wanted to give the guy $1,000 for the year, for the revival meeting.
Sure.
All they'd have to do is put $20 a week away, and they'd have $1,000. Mm-hmm. And it would be taken care of. His honorarium would be taken care of. Now, some churches, give love offerings, and they take up love offerings every night. Some don't. Some wait till the end of the week and take up a one-time love offering. If their church is trained to do that, then you'll get it. Now, I've talked to 2 or 3 of my friends that do it that way over the years. I said, yeah, but what about that guy that came Tuesday night? He didn't give any money. He probably wanted to. What about, I had a friend here Thursday night, and he couldn't give any money unless he handed it to me and I put it in my pocket. I don't think pastors think about all those things. Sure. And I don't see anything wrong with taking up an offering every night. I don't shill the offering at all. I don't push it ever. I've gone on a love offering basis all my life. I've never charged for, you got to give me so much. I've never done that. I don't believe in that. And God's taken care of us wonderfully. I have no complaints about God's people and how they've taken care of me and been a blessing to me and my preacher friends. And I've had to be frank with a couple, 3 preachers over my lifetime. That you mean to tell me this is all that came in? And of course they were lying, and they were stealing, and they got caught. But wow. C'est la vie. Wow. In my opinion. So.
Well, the bottom line, I think, is that God will take care of our needs and our
exactly.
And whatever may happen, the good, the bad, the ugly, like we talked about. It's just God will take care of your needs, and you just kind of go along for the ride and just enjoy it as it lasts.
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, and even the negative experiences really. Like you said earlier, they're the ones you remember because they're fun. They're funny now. They're hilarious.
Yeah.
the dumb things that guys have done, but and the good things are normal.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about this, and maybe this will be a help to some people and open their eyes to what they can do to help care for the
some guys
preacher.
would be mad at me for what I said, too.
He was talking about me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and tuning in. Catch us on the next episode. We'll continue our conversation with Brother Green on a future episode. Thanks for joining us.